What is going on, everyone? I'm Tim from Tierfon Orbital. This is my channel where we just talk about lightsaber installs. That's all I've got. Yeah, maybe I'll do unboxing videos one of these days. I don't know. What's going on, everyone? Tim from Tierfon Orbital. Another Mara Jade. This is the Mara Jade from Shadowfoil. This is the original. This is the first version that was offered by Shadowfoil. I feel like I've done a lot of these lately too. This one is a little bit different in that it has a 28mm speaker in it, and boy, does it sound good. Okay, so I do want to come into Fusion and talk really quickly about the chassis for this one because it is different from the previous chassis that I've done for this particular hilt, and then we will do a quick demo. Personally, I actually just got one of these for myself. I really love I just love the look of this hilt. In my opinion, it's got some touches of, classic vintage, Canon hilts in it. It's just a really solid hilt. And let me just say, with a 28mm speaker, this thing really shines. I will be reinstalling mine with a 28mm speaker, even though I just did it, right? So, but anyhow, with all of that out of the way, let's come into Fusion really quick and talk about this chassis. Okay, so here we are in Fusion. Check it out. Here's the chassis. All right, so first off, let's talk about the differences between this one and my previous ones for this hilt, okay? We've got a speaker pod in this. So one of the things that is deceptive about this hilt is that the midsection is like 24mm. 24, yeah, it's like just over 24. But down here, you've got room to put a 28mm speaker. And I don't know why I did not notice that in my previous design attempts for this. I think that just ignorantly, when I unthreaded the grip to measure for my chassis, I just measured here, but down here it steps up to over 28mm, just over 28mm. So you can get a 28mm speaker in here. So anyhow, but the only way to do that is with a speaker pod, right? So there is a speaker pod that lives in the pommel section of this hilt. We'll talk about that when we do it up top. But there is this indentation here is for a speaker pod PCB. This particular one is from stock, right? So that is where that lives. That is the female end of that. Battery tray is here. So I've got greebly work on both sides of the chassis. Other than this, the entire install is exactly the same as my previous ones, right? This is a CFX build. So this, wow. See, I've been doing a lot of CFX lately, and I'm just like got CFX on the brain. This is a Proffieboard install, right? So the Proffieboard does sit up underneath this lip and then pulls forward up underneath these forks to help it be secured in place, okay? I've got two rectangular LEDs here, kill switches here, and then up top, I have two indentations for another two rectangular LEDs. This is what gives us shine through in the lenses of the control box. Another really unique feature of this hilt that I like as well. Around back, I have two red button tactile switches. The reason I do this is because I have to glue a magnet to the top of those. We'll talk about that in a second, but this particular design uses some dummy screws for your switch posts, right? So that is what those secure to. And then up top, we've got our lit PCB emitter. This is from KR Sabers, okay? But that's it. Essentially the same chassis, just redesigned it to allow for a 28mm speaker pod. So let's come up top. All right, so here it is. The Mara Jade, Hand of the Emperor from Shadowfoil Props. This is the one that Shadowfoil released a couple of years ago. Shadowfoil does have a new version of this that is in full steel, which is also very classy. The differences between the two are the switches and, of course, this material that they're made out of, right? In the new version, the switches are spring-loaded lenses up top here, which is a cool feature, right? However, personally, for me, I actually like the look of aluminum on this hilt, okay? So one of the things that I modified for this build is I just painted these channels here just to make it look a little bit more in line with the it's just like a Canon, not Canon, it's an extended universe hilt, right? So we've only really seen artists' renditions of it. But there's always, and all the ones that I've seen, these are black in here. So that is the modification that I made to this one. And then, of course, the speaker pod setup, and then the chassis install, obviously. So for this hilt, these 2 screws are your switches. Okay, so for my install, I actually had to cut down these screws a little bit, and then you glue, or I glued, a neodymium magnet to this end, and then that will stick to the magnet that is on the red button switch, the red tactile switch that is underneath here, right? So there's already a battery in this one, obviously. So those are the switches. Now, when I did my first Hand of the Emperor, I thought that was just, I really didn't think I would like this, but I actually really, really do, because it's very cleverly hidden as switches. They're very responsive, nice and clicky and tactilely. So I actually like these switches. I think that it's a really clever way to hide, even though I know I'm being, I know that goes against everything I've ever said about magnetic plunger switches, but I've made an exception for this one because these are very, very secure, and they work quite well. Okay. Another reason I probably like that is because you don't have to take them out to remove the chassis. I really hate that with magnetic plunger switches installs. Anyhow, so this was already on. There are those 2 lit LEDs. Let's take a look at the chassis. So you want to unthread your grip. Here is the chassis. Okay, so I've done a pass of pewter rub and buff on this chassis. At the bottom, there is that speaker PCB. Makes a connection to the speaker pod that is in the pommel. Okay, I've got 2 lit rectangular LEDs here, and then up top there are those 2 lit buttons in the control box. This is another one of the things I really love about Mara Jade's hilt is this control box, right? Why have the control box and not light? I cannot talk today. I love that we have a control box that can have lit LEDs in it. All right, Proffieboard is there. So here is the speaker pod. If I could get this unthreaded here. Here's that speaker pod. Okay, so that basically, and I'm probably going to just glue this into the pommel. Okay, but that speaker pod lives in the pommel. Okay, and that is how we get away with doing a 28 millimeter speaker in this build, because this is just over 28 millimeters. Okay, but if you were to incorporate that into the chassis, you wouldn't be able to get the grip off because it's 2 internal diameters here. Okay, so let me put that back in place. Again, I'm probably going to end up just gluing that into the pommel so it can live in there. All right. So this is a 18650 battery, button top protected. Okay, put it in your battery tray. This is already on, so you won't hear any kind of audible cue when you put your battery in because the speaker is not connected. However, you will know it is on by the status light on the Proffieboard as well as those LEDs, obviously. Okay, so it's on now. Go ahead and thread my grip back in place. We're ready to go. Oh my God, listen. We're gonna come down to the bottom. Now listen. Why I did not realize that you could put a 28 millimeter speaker in this install previously, I'm really kicking myself. A 28 millimeter speaker in this hilt sounds fantastic. Oh my God. 22 millimeter speakers, specifically the Nano Elite speaker from Smuggler's Outpost, does sound fantastic. If you've got a hilt that's got a very, very thin internal diameter and you have to go with a 24 or a 22 millimeter speaker, the 22s I love, and I've said that before. However, I mean, the 28 is just superior to everything else. This is just loud, it's chunky, it sounds really, really good. So obviously one of the things I love about this hilt personally is that we can have external LEDs lit on it. Also, really classy that we get that smoky glass eye in the front. I love that. sounds great. Let's put a blade in it. Another thing that I love about this hilt is that it will take a 7/8 inch blade. One of the modifications that I did to this is typically this grub screw or this pan head screw around front is your blade retention, right? I have modified this. This does come with a blade plug. Here's the blade plug. I have designed a very small like extension for this glass eye, and I printed it in resin. So that will serve as the blade retention. It just makes it easier not having to pick up an Allen key and tighten your blade retention. I like having that in place instead, right? So 7/8 inch blade. Rest your blade on those PCB pins, and then you can tighten that glass eye, and that will serve as your blade retention, okay? And we are ready to go. Wow. Sounds so good. All right. Let's get to a Mara Jade font now.
The Emperor's Hand.
There we go. Ready? Wow. This is actually too loud. I could probably go to tone down the volume in the config. Wow. So there's that control box all lit up. I mean, it's just such a great hilt. I love thinner grip hilts, and I love that I can choke up on this. It feels great in hand, and then having a 28 in here. Okay, let's see what else we got. Let's see what else we got on here.
Ahsoka Tano.
Sounds so good. Wow. All right. One more.
I am Luke Skywalker.
So that's it. That's the Hand of the Emperor from Shadowfoil Props. Just a great classic looking hilt. And with a 28mm speaker. Wow. This thing really shines. So anyhow, that's all I've got to the customer. Thank you very much for trusting me with your install. If anyone has any questions about this particular install or anything really, please do not be a stranger. And with that being said, may the force be with you always. Have a good one, everybody.